Our next guest is one of the sport's biggest personalities. You can hear him weekly on his podcast, Rutten and Ronaldo, a former UFC heavyweight champion, three-time King of Pancrase open-weight champion, UFC Hall of Famer. He now stars in The River Thief, a movie about a reckless teenage drifter living life on the run along the Snake River. Joining us back on the show is the one and only Bas Rutten. Bas, welcome to Submission Radio.
Yeah, you're very welcome, guys. You guys are great.
Thank you. We often think so ourselves. Let's talk about The River Thief, Bas. We've seen you in more comedic or sort of ass-kicking roles before, but this is a bit of a change of pace for you. As like Dennis mentioned, you play a more serious character in this movie. Tell us, what attracted you to the role of Clyde?
You know, I didn't have a lot of time to say yes. So they just gave me the script. So when do they film? In 2 days? Okay. You know, so then I went over the next day, and the next day we started shooting. So
wow.
I couldn't delve all the way in there, but Clyde was just the totally opposite of what Nico was, and Here Comes the Boom. You know, yeah. Clyde is a very bad person, a drug dealer, you know, meth. He makes meth himself, and he has no problem. He's a sociopath. So killing people, you know, if they deserve it, well, it's not my fault. They made the mistake, so why wouldn't I kill them? You know, it's a very normal thing for him to do. So I thought, yeah, that would be fun to play a guy like that and to scare everybody. It was funny because I went to the premiere in Tennessee, and they, for some reason, had some kids in there. And the kids, after the show, I wanted to high-five them, but they avoided me like the plague, man. They were walking big circles around me. I tried to high-five with my hand up, but no, I couldn't get a smile from these kids. And the parents really had to say, no, he's a really nice guy. That was just a movie, you know. So I think I did a great job. Some parents also said, I really think you're an a-hole right now. I go, okay. So I think I did it okay. Let me say that.
That's the biggest, I guess, applause there. If the kids believe it, then you must have done a great job. Now, we mentioned it's a very, very interesting plot in this movie, and it's out in select cinemas and also available for download via video on direct services. Tell us a little bit about what fans can expect from this movie and sort of the plot of it.
You know, this is a kid, the main called Joel Courtney. He was in Super 8, that movie from J.J. Abrams. Mm-hmm. He was one of the stars in that, and he grew up now, and this is where he tries to go in different kind of genres. And he's a drifter. He's a kid who steals everything that he wants. You know, he has no money, but he just whatever he sees and he wants, he takes it. And then he meets this girl, and he kind of falls in love with the girl, but he doesn't know how to treat her. He thinks that if I give her stolen stuff, that she will like me, but she knows it's stolen. So this whole confrontation goes on. He starts to make his life a little bit better. He wants to be a better person. So deep down inside, it's not a bad kid. He's looking for his father as well, in this certain little village. And then this big drug deal goes down, and he happens to be there, and he steals $1 million from these two bad guys, which is Clyde and his buddy, which is my buddy also. He's a cop, but he's a very bad cop also. He's already on an investigation because he did many bad things. And of course, now we need to find that kid. And so once we realize, wait a minute, he knows this girl. And Tommy Cash plays the brother from Johnny Cash, plays the grandfather from the girl in this. Rayleigh Kane is her name. And he, of course, wants to get involved. He tries to make the kid a little bit better. But once the bad guys start realizing, wait a minute, the kid hangs out with these two, you know, of course, they're going to go after those people and try to use them to get the boy, bring his $1 million back.
Wow. I can't wait to check this out. I'm wondering, Bas, where are you sort of at with your acting career at the moment? Because we know that you've had a lot of positive reviews for your previous projects. You know, you played Nico, my all-time favorite, The Men's Room in Grand Theft Auto 4. That one's always going to stay with me. But will we see you in a few more movies over the next year? And will you be looking for sort of more dramatic, serious roles like in The River Thief? Because it sounds like you kind of enjoyed this one.
You know, I enjoyed it, but what I would enjoy mostly is just comedy action, you know, stuff like that. Will be my fighting, shooting, but, you know, with a twist, we're always laughing, you know, Lethal Weapon, stuff like that. I think it's would be very fun to do. But, you know, if you could play one time a real bad guy, and they gave me 6 weeks to really delve into that script and really pull this really crazy character out, I would love to do that as well, of course. Now, the problem what I had the last 9 years pretty much was Inside MMA. Not the problem, it was a great show, but the problem was it shoots on Fridays and it's a live show. And many TV shows that they wanted me in for little things, they shoot their shows on Fridays. A weekly show most of the time, especially a sitcom, is shot on a Friday because they rehearse the whole week and then they shoot it on a Friday. So we had to say no to a lot of projects because Inside MMA was so dear to my heart. Now with that show now being canceled, now it opens up more for me. So when pilot season comes around, I'm going to start doing more auditions, and then hopefully I can pick something up along the line.
That's awesome. Just before we sort of talk about Inside MMA, I'm just wondering, are there any crazy roles that you've turned down? Like any roles that you sort of look at and think like, you guys may not know this, but I was actually offered the part for, such and such movie or TV show?
No, I just had one time that they offered me a role, and it was a lead, and it came from a big company and everything, and I started reading the script, and it was really cool. And then it started taking really weird turns, like things that could not impossibly happen. Like I would be in prison, and in prison we were making, I don't even know the different names, I'm just going to throw it out there. They were making dildos, I don't know what the name for it is, electric ones. And from one of those dildos, I made a hole in the front, I put a pin in, and then I put in a lock, and I turned on the dildo, and then the lock would open, And I was in a fight with a guy, and he threw a 45-pound weight plate at me in the prison's gym. I would duck, and that plate decapitated somebody else behind me, and things like that started popping up, and I kept coming, and it was like 12 in a row. And I go, because the first time you think, I probably can talk him into something else. And then, but once it keeps on coming back, then I go, I'm sorry, I declined. I said, no, I would not like to do a movie. I think it's going to be very hard to shoot those kind of scenes. It's just not believable. The same when I hit with a broomstick somebody's head off. Now, at that moment, the whole movie doesn't really, it's not really real anymore because you cannot do that. It's impossible. So, yeah, that was the only time that I said, okay, no. And I after I did it one time in a really bad audition, this was the most horrible thing for me. It was one of my favorite shows was for Castle. And I loved that show, Castle. And they called me. We had a party the day before, so I was really hungover. And I went over to the studios, the Inside MMA studio. I had to shoot some promos, but the promos were just audio. So I'm sitting there, and I'm doing the audio promos, and they all go really well. So I'm feeling good. And right away the telephone goes, hey, there's an audition. I said, when is it? Well, you're going to have to go straight to the audition room. So they sent me the script. I'm on my phone trying to memorize that script with the hangover. That was a big lesson I learned at that moment, that to never do that again. Because, that audition, that I really sucked in that audition. And, preparation is the key to everything. For instance, when I played Nico, which is, is kind of boss, but then with 20 cups of coffee, I had that script way before. So I could play it 5 different ways. If I would do a scene, I can do it like this or like this or like this, and then it would say, oh, do it like that. So that's what I like to do. I don't even need the script anymore because I've been rehearsing for 6 weeks. I know it, and I know there's rewrites all the time, but that's easy. These are little rewrites you can do. But that preparation is the key to success. I always did that. The one time I didn't do it, I missed a part. It was not a big part, but it was one of my favorite shows. I would have loved to do that.
Well, you touched on the last episode of Inside MMA. We wanted to have a chat with you about that. It was earlier this month. It was a program that MMA fans loved, and more importantly, a chance for them to see you break down this crazy world of MMA on a weekly basis. Have to find out from you, Bas. What was it like doing the final episode after being on air for 9 years, 10 seasons, or 433 episodes?
It was eerie. It was weird because you're leaving a family. You've been 9 years every week. I mean, I saw all these people there as a family. I see them way more than I see my own family in Holland, because every week you come back and you see them and you form a friendship, and those kind of things. Those were hard, but it's life. Things doors close, doors open, and if it's time to stop, then. Then we keep on going. It was a shame. I just found out 2 weeks before, so I would have a little bit more heads up, so I can only start jumping into other. But again, it's what life is all about. It's finding this really fun thing that I want to do next. I'm looking in a whole bunch of things. One of them is speaking at schools. Kids against bullying. I kind of start focusing on that a little bit. I actually have a talk right after this interview with somebody who represent speakers, and they actually contacted me, so that was a good thing already. And I was busy. I did that, maybe I said it on the show a few times. I do it for 3 years in a row. I've been doing it now for a high school, for these kids, these 500 kids who leave high school and then either all go to college or they go work. And, then I talk about my life. It starts with a video of what I have done that makes sure that nobody's going to interrupt me after they show that video, it breaks the ice, so to say. There's funny moments, the food fight scene I had in there from Here Comes the Boom. So people start laughing. They realize you're not a real badass. You're a badass, but you're a good guy. And then, you start connecting to the kids. And then you start, this is what I learned in life. This is how I dealt with it. And then I do all the things that happened in my life. I bring it back to this life because everything is the same. It's just different now. But the same problems exist. And the way you deal with those kind of things, that's what it's all about. Just because somebody's opinion is that you're fat or you're ugly or whatever it is, it's somebody's opinion. I'll tell them, I say, if somebody says to me, you look crazy. I say, what's your favorite color? That's my answer. And then they go like brown. And I go blue. Mine is blue. I say, you should change yours to blue. Why would I change it to blue? I said, no, blue is a way better color than brown is. And they go, dude, that makes absolutely no sense. I said, exactly, because it's just an opinion. So why would people hang on to the opinions of these losers with no IQs? They're proven to have lower IQs because otherwise they wouldn't do it. Nobody knows. Nobody really thinks it's tough. If you think it's tough to assault a kid who has there's something wrong with the kid, or maybe he's smarter than you, and you assault that kid with a group of your friends, a weaker kid than you, and you do that with a bunch of guys, and you think that is cool, something is wrong in the head with you, because that's the ultimate, being the ultimate loser. That's what that is all about. And once you start talking to kids like that, and then I start picking out bullies. I'm not going to point out because I don't know who the bullies are, but I start doing the things like, I always use this example. That's what I said with cheating in mixed martial arts, in any sport, with steroids, all that stuff. If you brush your teeth at night and you look at yourself in the mirror, do you see a real tough guy there? Or do you see a guy who cheated, who did this, who did that? Now, with that saying, just saying, I know that night, if they listen to me and they brush their teeth and the bully looks himself in the mirror, he will start thinking, he goes, am I really a tough guy or not? Because, that's kind of weird, I invented this whole fake Twitter account, and then I start tagging people. Why won't I do it in their face? Or when he did it in their faces, why do I need my friends around? Why does it make me feel good to back down on a little person? And then they start realizing, wait a minute, the problem is with me. So it's good for the kids that get bullied, but it's also good for the bullies. Hopefully it opens their eyes that it's the opposite of being a tough guy. If you're a tough guy, come to my gym, I always say. You want to beat up somebody? Show you're a real tough guy, because you can make a lot of money with it nowadays.
This is why you are the perfect guy for the job, and I'm jealous of these lucky kids, because when Dennis and I were in high school, we always had really crappy speakers. Now, in 2016, people get Bas Rutten coming to their school, so lucky them. Now, seeing as obviously Inside MMA is no longer Bas, we still want to get your thoughts on what's happening in the world of MMA, so we've got some things that we want to pick your brain about. Before we sort of talk about UFC 205, which is the big one, we just got to get your thoughts on these problematic negotiations between GSP and the UFC. Before his return, almost looks certain as if UFC 206 is going to be where GSP was going to be fighting. Now it's up in the air. What have you thought about how the UFC have handled the situation with the GSP? Are you a bit surprised that he probably won't be fighting in the UFC anymore?
Well, he will fight. It's a money thing. He's a Rousey, he has McGregor, he has millions. And if he wants to make a comeback, this is the right time to make a comeback, since he's a really beloved fighter. Everybody wants to see him. But of course, he's got new demands. He's going to go like, I'm not going to fight for what you guys paid me at that time. Right now, you guys just sold for $4.2 billion or whatever it was, more than $4 billion. I know there is money, and everybody wants a piece of it. You see all the other fighters start doing it. So, that's what I think happened. And he's trying, to shoot for a high number. And I think the UFC should, let him fight. And it will happen. I truly believe so, because they're going to need a star. Because McGregor, the rumors now are very almost certain that he's going to take a year off. Ronda Rousey, well, we're going to have to see how she makes a return. I think she will do great. But what if she loses? Well, you're going to lose that. You lose two of the biggest drawers for the UFC. So then a guy like GSP will automatically fit in really nice for them. So eventually it will happen, I guess. But right now, I think it's a power move, to say no. We don't do it. It's like McGregor at the time when he didn't show up. They put their foot down and they said, no, you're off the card. And sometimes you have to do it like that because otherwise you give him too much lenience and then, negotiations will never be in your favor. So, but eventually with this happening, what's going to happen with McGregor and Rousey, and Rousey, don't get me wrong, even if she wins, I don't know how long she still will be fighting. If there will be another fight after that. We're going to have to find that out. But losing McGregor by itself is already a big thing, And Rousey, hopefully, she wins this fight because she's a huge draw.
Well, it seems like Michael Bisping and GSP have sort of verbally agreed to fighting each other. Dana White, of course, came out and said the fight won't be happening at UFC 206. But what do you think of this Bisping GSP matchup? Does that make sense to you? And do you think there's a chance we might actually see it happen?
Well, Michael also knows there is money to be made, and he knows that he fights against Georges St-Pierre. There's going to be a great pay-per-view buy, and being the champion and all now, he's got a cut of that pay-per-view buy, so he's going to make a lot of money, And he's at the end of his career. I mean, he had a lot of injuries over the last few years, So a big money fight for him would make totally sense. When I read the internet, and some people are saying, oh, he just does that because he's looking for easier fights, and I go, oh, easy fight? Georges St-Pierre is not going to be an easy fight. Yeah, but he's not been fighting for a while. That's why it's going to be easier. Trust me, man. This guy had kept on training. If you have the right state of mind, there should never be ring rust or cage rust, whatever you want to call it in MMA. There should never be that. I didn't have it after 7 years. It's just the way you spar and the way you go to a fight. So, no, that's not. He just looks for a payday, which I, think is a very smart thing to do for him.
Now, Bas, last time we had you on the show, we spoke about Conor McGregor and what will potentially be next for him. We're talking about the possibilities of him fighting Eddie Alvarez. You said you wanted to see him fight Aldo next, and that's the right thing to do. And if it didn't happen, then the fans would speak out their mind. If you obviously ended up fighting Alvarez, it is Alvarez now at UFC 205. What are your thoughts on the matchup now? Do you still feel like this was the wrong move by the UFC?
Well, it's the wrong move, but again, it's a money fight. First of all, McGregor wants that fight. He wants to be the first guy, next to Couture, who holds two belts in two different weight classes, right? And if he gives up, vacates now the 145 belt, then that won't happen. So that belt will be free after 205, and then he can decide what he does. Now, he's going to take a year off, but if he comes back, I don't see him fighting at 145 anymore. He was always, he's a tall guy. It's very hard for him to make 145. I think he does much better at 155. He will be stronger at that weight. But still, Eddie Alvarez, it's a real tough guy. I mean, we know what he can do. This is a guy who brings constant pressure. And we saw with McGregor the first time when he fought Diaz, that constant pressure didn't work out well for him. He started having stamina problems. In the second fight, there was a moment, I believe it was in the third round, when Diaz, I believe if Diaz would have pushed at that moment, he might have taken that fight. But he didn't allow McGregor to get a second wind. And then McGregor came back and he won the fight. He clearly won the fight. I don't think it was that Diaz won. I thought he really won that fight. So Eddie Alvarez knows this. And stamina is not a thing that you can build in 6 months, because stamina doesn't have anything to do. Of course, it has to do with running hills and doing crazy stuff for stamina, but a lot of it is in your head. And once you start doubting yourself in the head, I might have said it on the last show as well, if he gets tired and he starts thinking about the last 2 times that he got tired, and especially the first time because that's where he lost, then you start breathing different. You start trying to cover up. You start, you don't want to show your opponent you're tired, so now you don't breathe through your mouth anymore. You start breathing through your nose, but your breathing pattern gets interrupted, and that's going to make you more tired. You simply have to breathe in and out. I said it last week on an interview with me. They said, "Oh, I heard Bas breathing heavy, and I thought he was done." That I did that when I did track and field. My dad always told me, "Don't try to camouflage if you're tired. Just breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, because if you do that, you can keep on going. If you try to fix it, to focus on the breathing, that's when you're going to have stamina problems." And I always took that to the heart. And that's why I had some guys say, "Well, he was getting tired." Well, I still knocked you out when I was getting tired. What you said, right? I mean, I wasn't tired at all. I was just taking my breath. And but there's a lot of game playing in the head. The little voice, the bad voice, and the good voice, I always say. And if McGregor needs to stay away from the bad voice, then once he gets tired, that he can still pull it off. He should think about the last fight in where he had the second wind. Move around, walk away from the fight. Literally, he did that. Take a breath and then come back. It's not like I'm running away from you. That was perfect. He should always do that. Alvarez is not going to give him that space. He will be a guy like Rafael dos Anjos. He will be on you nonstop. And he knows that it's going to be his game plan because that's the way to get McGregor tired. And once a fighter is tired, you can be any fighter on the planet. Well, you're probably going to lose.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you might be favoring Alvarez over McGregor. Am I correct in this? Are you picking Alvarez in this one, Bas?
No, I think if the first 2.5 rounds, if there will be a knockout, I think it's probably coming from McGregor that he wins by knockout. I'm afraid when he goes into the championship rounds, and Alvarez has been there a bunch of times, and he pushes it, that could be trouble for Conor.
So, yeah, Bas, last time we were on the program, we were talking about how McGregor was going to be fighting Aldo and how that's the fight that should happen, and this Alvarez fight shouldn't come together. And then McGregor wanted the Alvarez fight to come together, so it did. Now we're talking about the fact that he's going to be giving up one of the belts. And even though during an interview with Sports Illustrated, he admitted to thinking about giving up one of the belts after sort of spending some time with it backstage, in the press conference, it almost seemed like he was sort of second-guessing the fact that he was going to give back one of the belts. How much power do you think the UFC have to actually force him give up one of the titles if he does win at UFC 205? And how much pull do you think Conor McGregor has where he could say, you know what, I've changed my mind, I want to keep both titles and there's nothing he can do about it?
Oh, I don't know what the contract says about that, but I'm pretty sure that if he right away would defend the title, but he says he's going to be a year off, but if he right away defends the title at 145, then that could be a reason to let him keep it. But then again, he's going to hold to 155. That's the problem with having two belts. I think the UFC should have the power to just say, no, the belt's going to be taken away from you. I mean, they did it with me and Pancras a while ago because I couldn't make it because I chose to stay with my family because my daughter was being born and there were big complications. I could have lost my wife and my daughter. So I said, I'm not going to fight. They said, okay, well, then we got to take the belt back. I said, oh, yeah, whatever. I'll get it back anyway when I come back.
Yeah, that's an interesting sort of thing that's going to happen, and it remains to be seen. Bas, before we let you go, just quickly, you are actually going to be part of the World Series of Fighting Madison Square Garden New Year's Eve show. This is a massive, massive show for World Series of Fighting. For fans who don't know, there are 4 titles on the line. What are some of the fights that you're looking forward to the most?
Well, main event, of course, Justin Gaethje against Severino. That's going to be a great fight. I see Gaethje winning this because right now he just seems unstoppable. I always tell him, even when I see him, I say, you can even hold back a little bit. You don't have to load up your punches. He's so powerful. Great low kicks, great strikes, great knees, great wrestling. I mean, this guy can take you down and just ground and pound you into a pulp. So he's dangerous everywhere. Always action. 16-0, only 2 decisions. I mean, come on, this is a great guy. Marlon Moraes versus Silva. That's going to be a really great fight as well. I think Silva, from his 25 wins, I believe it was 15. We talked about it yesterday. 15 wins by knockout and a bunch of submission victories. This is definitely going to be the toughest test for Marlon Moraes, who was also on like a 10 or 12 fight winning streak. And Silva is, I believe, even on a longer winning streak. So that's going to be a high-paced fight. Moraes, I always talk about his footwork, not like Dominic Cruz, but he's, if he fights a wrestler, he doesn't even have to stop him with his hands. He just moves out of the way. It's amazing what kind of footwork he has and what from different angles he attacks. So I always love to see him fight. David Branch, against Taylor, that's going to be good. Branch really found himself the last few years. In the beginning, he was a guy who always went to a decision, but now he starts stopping people because he said, you know what, if I'm going to get knocked out, so be it. I was too careful all the time. And now when he does that, he really showcases his skills, and he started stopping people. So those fights I'm really looking forward. Of course, it's a very interesting fight between Shields and Fitch. You know what's going to happen there. I think Fitch, if he's smart, he's going to keep it on his feet because he's the better striker. And Shields, well, he's going to need it on the ground. But with John Fitch being the wrestler, can he take it to the ground? Then again, he took Dan Henderson down when Dan Henderson got tired at Strikeforce. So there's always that possibility.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And like you mentioned, it sort of reminds you of back in the Japanese days with the big New Year's Eve shows everybody could get excited about. we know we're out of time, Buzz, but just quickly, a lot of people are talking about whether Justin Gaethje will test free agency and go to the UFC or somewhere else after this fight in December. Do you think he'll re-sign with World Series of Fighting?
I hope he does. I can't look inside his head. I really hope he does. I think, if they gave him a good pay and he feels good, he should stay in the World Series of Fighting. But then, I'm a little biased, of course, because I would love to commentate on him, since he's just a pleasure to see. This guy, like I said, there's somebody's going to get knocked out, or you see action, but it's always action. So for him, money-wise, I don't know. Maybe he's going to say, yeah, I'm going to test free market. Maybe there's even more money at Bellator at that time for him, maybe with the sponsoring. I don't know. But I think that policy probably is going to change with the Reebok deal. I heard it's going to end in 2017. I don't know the specifics of it. But, they need to do something there for the fighters. I do believe that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you guys go. Bas Rutten, thank you for coming onto the program. You can download The River Thief now via iTunes and other VOD providers. Also, make sure to check out the O2 Trainer to improve your lung function and get into summer shape. You think maybe Conor McGregor might need an O2 Trainer, Bas, to get ready for this fight with Eddie Alvarez, UFC 205. It could be a secret weapon. You can also find out more information about that at o2trainer.com. Make sure to jump on there and get yours today. And listen to Bas every week on his podcast, Rutten and Ronaldo, which is available on Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, SoundCloud. And make sure to follow Bas on Twitter at Bas Rutten MMA. Bas, thanks so much for being on the program.
You're very welcome, guys. Well, I just went through the emails. Do you realize we sent back and forth 72 emails in the course of the time that we know each other? So that's funny, right?
Wow. That's right. Well, I mean, to 72 more emails, and every email for us has been a pleasure, even when you just send us a question mark. It's a real honor writing to you.
Awesome, man. We'll let you go. Talk soon. Bye.